Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure today to welcome Iyad Ameen Madani, the Secretary General of the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, as our guest speaker here today. We are indeed truly honoured to have you with us this afternoon, in spite of your very busy schedule. I'm also very pleased to be able to officially congratulate you on your appointment and to welcome you to New York and to IPI today. Mr. Madani's career leading up to his appointment as Secretary General has been remarkable. He has a distinguished background in business, in media, and in politics. Mr. Madani began his career in aviation and held various positions at Saudi Arabian Airlines, including his latest post as Director General of the Administrative Development Department. From there, he moved on to media and became the first editor-in-chief of the Saudi Gazette newspaper, as well as serving as the Director General of the OIC Organisation for Press and Publication. In 1999, Mr. Madani was elected for membership of the Shura Council and was appointed Minister for Hajj, a position he held for 6 years until being appointed as Minister of Culture and Information. Unsurprisingly, his accomplishments since becoming Secretary General of the OIC in January have not been anything less impressive or inspiring. Since assuming office, I've learned, you have visited more than 20 member states and different areas of conflict, including Mali, the West Bank, Bangladesh, Kenya, and Nigeria, in order to better understand the dynamics and the realities on the ground. As head of, and you reminded me in our meeting in my office, as head of the world's actually second largest international organization after the UN, with 57 member states, the Secretary General is, my friends, in a unique position to pursue the OIC's priority areas of addressing terrorism, religious and sectarian extremism, and safeguarding the interests of the Muslim world, and indeed to protect human rights. From Boko Haram in Nigeria to the Islamic State in Syria and in Iraq, he has been an outspoken critic of such terrorist groups. He was one of the first to denounce the Islamic State, and the Secretary General condemned their practices as having nothing to do with Islam and its principles, and affirmed that the OIC stands ready to provide humanitarian assistance to Christians who have faced displacement and eviction from their homes. As we look at this year's General Assembly and beyond, achieving global peace and stability and combating religious intolerance and incitement seem more challenging than ever. Secretary General Madani certainly has his work cut out for him, but as he has done in his past endeavors, he will undoubtedly provide the OIC with inspirational leadership as it consolidates and strengthens its essential peace-building work. Now, before I hand the floor over to the Secretary General, may I please ask you to silence your cell phones. Mr. Secretary General, we are delighted to have you here with us, and the floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى الرسل أجمعين. Mr. Larson, thank you very much for your kind words. And it's indeed a great privilege for me to be here and to have the opportunity to visit and speak in an IPI session. and to a distinguished group of your caliber. I decided to dress up like this so nobody will notice me in the streets of Manhattan. But, Excellency, you said this is a unique position, being the Secretary General of the OIC. I don't know whether you meant unique in English or Arabic, because unique, you all know what unique is in English, but unique in Arabic is, forgive me, ladies, is screwed up. So I guess it's a bit of both, Excellency. But it's indeed a challenge. It's indeed a challenge. And in the few minutes that I have here talking to you, I would like to tell you a little bit about the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. It's an organization that was born more than 40 years ago. The basic event that started leaders of the Islamic world to think about an organization of this kind was a fire in Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of the three holiest mosques for Muslims. But since then, it has grown to the 57 member states that it has now, and it has branched out and assumed a role not only in facing up to political turmoil and crisis in the member states, but also in the realm of economics, humanitarian aid, science and technology and education, and cultural exchange. Though that crisis brought these countries together, it takes more than a crisis. It takes more than just a big event to keep an organization going. I think what binds these 57 member states together is that sense of a shared culture, of a shared intellectual heritage, and of course of common interests and challenges. It's an organization whose member states represent about 1.5 billion of the population of our Earth. And they share with the rest of humanity, hopefully in an integrated manner, all the hopes, all the aspirations, and of course face up to all the challenges. It's needless to say, to tell you that now with the way we communicate, anything that happens anywhere is also the concern of the rest of us. A crisis somewhere is a crisis everywhere. It makes us all more aware of what takes place in any part of the world. It makes us witnesses sometimes for all the killings and victimization that take place in different parts of the world, not only victims of natural disasters, but also victims of man-made wars and actions of violence. One would have thought that this global village would have brought us closer together. Instead, perhaps in spite of, we note that we live in a world that is increasingly polarized along the lines of ethnicity, race, and religion. If you just take a look at the map, you will see that from the Republic of Central Africa, in Central Africa, to Myanmar, Burma in the east, we can see the effects of ethnic and sectarian strife where one community perceives the other with fear and anxiety, leading to violence. If you add to that unfair competitions for resources, land, and opportunity, you see that wedges have been driven among peoples, and some of them were dressed up as cultural differences. In addition, one of the unfortunate side effects of the economic downturn in the United States, the financial crisis, and in some of the countries of Europe, that we have witnessed, suppose, the rebirth or the more active and increasing role of the hard right, of the extreme right. You can see this in the elections that were taken recently in Europe or in the domestic politics of the United States. This extreme right wing, it stirs up, unfortunately, sentiments against migrants, communities, based on race and religion. And what is of a particular concern to the OIC is that when it comes to Islam, one could unmistakably note that increasingly Muslims are stigmatized, singled out, and associated with a culture of backwardness, violence, and terrorism. People still ask questions like, can Islam and modernity coexist? People still assume that if you are a Muslim, you cannot conceive of a democratic society of social equality, of justice for all. They think that just because you're a Muslim, your background, your culture, your belief, make all these notions something you cannot live with. You revolt against, you misuse. You can see this in what is written and said about Muslim migrant communities in some European societies. So what do we do in this world of polarization? What do we do as an OIC that, of course, basically concerned with issues that relate to Islam? Though we're not a religious organization, the OIC does not go around converting people or telling them that Islam is the right path. It's a political organization. The members are countries, governments. But of course, because of that common culture, because of that common heritage, we are concerned with how Islam is perceived and how Muslim communities are thought of. There are many crises, but I must start with the crisis that perhaps we've been living with for the past, more than half a century, and where Your Excellency has been very close to. It's the situation in Palestine. We, as an organization, have condemned, and we consider the Israeli action in Gaza as brutal. You know, anywhere where people are subjected to an attack or live in conditions of war, they can flee, they can go somewhere else. That's why you see refugee camps. But if you live in Gaza, there is no place to go. You sit there waiting for the next rocket to hit your home, to hit your school, to hit wherever, your mosque. There are about, more than 50 or 60 mosques within Gaza that were destroyed by the Israelis in this last onslaught. But there is no place to go. Gaza is just a big prison. And we think that situation is not necessary. We have the means to end such a conflict. I'm here out of my league, sitting next to Mr. Larson, who has been one of the engineers of the Oslo Agreement and has been in and out of the region for many, many years. But I think we must master the political will to face up to that situation. And I think most of that political will needs to be mastered right here in the United States. We think the role the Americans can play is crucial if that crisis to reach an end. And if we let it go, little by little, we see under such a government like the current government in Israel, that Israel will be an apartheid state. And this is, I don't think this is what the founders of Israel wanted to see when they thought of a country for the Jewish people. And the Arabs, and I'm not talking here because I'm a Saudi or an Arab, have given everything they can. The Arab peace plan that was adopted by the Arab Summit in 2002 in Beirut gave everything any Israeli leader has asked for. Complete peace, normalization, full normalization of relationship, channels of commerce, everything that if you go back and trace the demands of various Israeli parties and politicians, you would see them that they have been responded to positively in the Arab peace plan. But there were no serious, not one voice that took that Arab peace plan seriously within Israel. And it's still there, it's still available. And actually it has been adopted by the OIC, giving it also the legitimacy of the Islamic world. We welcome, as an OIC, the resolution taken by the United Nations Human Rights Council to send an investigation committee to Gaza to see if there were any war crimes committed by anybody, Israelis, Hamas, anybody. It's with great concern that we note that the only vote, the only country that casted a no vote to formulate such a committee and give it the opportunity to go to Gaza and investigate was the United States of America. This is at the very same time where everybody also wants the United States to be the mediator. I mean, you can either be a mediator or a party to a conflict. You cannot be both. And I think this is where the political will is needed to be mastered and make Israel accountable as another country in the community of nations. We, of course, as an OIC, are involved in all the other issues that pose problems of insecurity to the member states. Our approach in dealing with such a situation is to denounce and reject completely and outrightly extremism and terrorism, because we consider both as main sources and reasons for such instability. The OIC has always held a principled position against terrorism and violent extremism, irrespective of where it comes from. It was one of the pioneers among similar international intergovernmental organizations in adapting. We did that in 1994, where we adopted a code of conduct, and then in 1999, Convention on Combating International Terrorism. I still believe that the OIC needs to be in the forefront in combating terrorism, in particular by countering false claims and narratives of terror groups like Boko Haram or ISIS, which we call in the OIC as CSIS, criminal state, not Islamic state. Because as these groups carry out their heinous terrorist activities, they're claiming justifications in the name of Islam. I don't know how many of you have watched that CNN segment where the claimed head of Boko Haram said that Allah, God, talked to him and asked him to kidnap the 200 schoolgirls. And that Allah talked to him again. You know, he must have a very special relationship with Allah, and asked him to sell those girls. You know, as Muslims, we believe that Allah spoke only once, and it was with Moses. But this fellow, you know, had an advantage. He was one ahead of Moses. Allah talked to him twice. You know, this craziness cannot be associated with any religion, and it has to be examined carefully. We must understand how such movements come to being and where their money comes from, where the logistical support comes from. Where do they get ammunitions? They do this very well. They have very good logistics. Boko Haram is a movement in the north of Nigeria, and it's one of the least developed regions of Nigeria. Its rank and file are basically unemployed, half-educated young Nigerians. You cannot, with any rationality, assume that people of that capability can come up to the level of logistics that Boko Haram conducts its operations with. Another challenge that we have to look at squarely and face it squarely as an OIC, it's this challenge of sectarian differentiation and violence in the Muslim world. It poses grave threat to peace and stability in certain OIC member states. It's a matter of priority for us that all intra-Muslim discords and divisions are identified, admitted, and faced up to. We cannot only as an organization, as member states, as societies with majority Muslim population, blame others for our own situation. Neither can we stop at tracing the manifestations of conspiracy theory and creative chaos theories. We also have to acknowledge our own failures. We have to understand ourselves and our faith in order to enhance peaceful coexistence and know how we can live together. Along the same lines, we are also concerned with any issues that have security dimensions to the member states, whether it's Lebanon or Libya or Yemen. And of course, we have welcomed the formation of the new government in Iraq. We wish it would manage to build up or rebuild Iraq, build the institutions that were devastated and dismantled when Iraq was invaded by American forces. You know, it was one of the most amazing episodes where a decision was made to dismantle the bureaucracy, the army, the security forces, and the party. So Iraq was simply left with a big, huge void, and people had to lean back on their basic sense of identities. And we think that there was an atmosphere where that sectarian identity was encouraged and eventually ended in the violent Iraq that never had a stable moment for those past years. We really hope that the government, with the support of all the international actors, with the support of the region, neighboring countries, and of course, above all, with the support of the Iraqis themselves, can regain the momentum of sustainable development and stability. In Syria, it's unfortunate that the bloodshed is continuing. We advocate a return of normalcy according to Geneva. We're also happy that the peace process in Mali, northern Mali, one of the biggest areas of conflict where drug trafficking, human trafficking, and extremism find a very inviting environment. In the Republic of Central Africa, we've been very much involved. There is a special envoy, a former foreign minister of Senegal, who represents the OIC. And we think that elections are not the priority there. The priority is the cessation of hostilities, a transitional government that can represent all the factions, and then you have the environment, the framework of a meaningful election. We are trying our best to open doors in Myanmar, where Muslims are not only persecuted, but also denied their identity. They are not being recognized as citizens of the country. They are classified as Bengalis, meaning that eventually they'll be kicked out because they are not genuine citizens. We have also a special envoy, a former foreign minister of Malaysia, Syed Hamid Al-Bar, and we're trying to engage the government in Myanmar. It's a very hard task. And, you know, when I was young, going to college, you know, it was almost in fashion to explore Buddhism as a philosophy of peace, of tolerance, of love, So it was most shocking to see that within that philosophy of tolerance, love, and coexistence, you can find extreme voices. But we're doing our best, and it's not easy. And we think that that crisis needs to be recognized as a human rights crisis. The way the Muslim Myanmaris, Burmese, are treated is simply in contradiction of every element of all the human rights that we all advocate. You know, I'm looking forward to the question and answer period, but let me just cover up two more points. Another area of concern to us is Islamophobia. And by that we mean hate speech, where Muslims are singled out just because they are Muslims. And here we have this difficulty of defining the borderline between hate speech and freedom of expression. Does the freedom of expression give the right for me to insult religious values of another society, religious figures and prophets of another religion? It's a debate. Sometimes it's a legitimate debate. But I don't know of any society that has no taboos when it comes to the freedom of speech, including here, including New York City, the most liberal of liberal places in the world. There are taboos. There are topics and themes and convictions that each society has decided should not be touched. And I think this is the case for all other societies. So we have to cross that difference between what it is that gives me the freedom of speech and what it is that also gives the other the respect that he is so concerned with. But we notice an alarming increase in Islamophobic expressions. We think that cultural exchanges, more contacts, more perhaps stages to talk and get to know each other better could perhaps do the trick. We also, in that area of individual freedom, we advocate multiculturalism, but we think cultures are also unique in some respect, and that beliefs in certain cultures are not necessarily universal human rights. But in human rights arenas, we see certain values, certain practices being pushed as universal human values. We have nothing against what any society does and accepts in terms of social practices. But to make those social practices that could be unique to a culture, to a place, to a civilization, as universal human rights, I think is something that we have to stop and think about. Within the OIC member states, a family is conceived of in the traditional sense of a man and a woman. If other societies want to redefine families, as it could be a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, or a man and a man, that's their business. But to say that that practice is a human right issue that should be universal, that should be accepted, that should be encouraged in every social setting, is, I think, stretching the line a little bit beyond what it should be at. Let me conclude by saying that the OIC is also very much involved in the fight against poverty. Most of our member states live below the poverty line. And we have created a very strong arm called the Islamic Development Bank that has done great work in terms of infrastructure projects in most of the member states. But we think now it's the stage to do more in terms of microfinance, where you can reach out to the less involved, the more excluded elements of society. I think if we manage to do that effectively in the next few years through microfinance and small loans, you can reach to family units and you can reach to the most perhaps marginalized segments of Muslim societies, the women. And women's rights is a matter of great importance to us. And we still do, and we will continue pushing for the rights that, that half of the society should have. And, there is always this argument in some of our member states where they tell you, why are you saying that we're not, giving women their equal rights? Women are our mothers, women are our sisters, our daughters, and we all respect our mothers. We all, or at least some of us, love our wives. We all adore our daughters. But if you stop and think, you will see that in that line of thinking, a woman is always identified with a man. She's either the mother of some man, or the daughter of a man, or the sister of a man. And we think that is fine, this is natural. Man is also, the son of this and the... But this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the recognition of the inner rights that a woman, like a man, has as a human being. And what's most amazing is that most of these rights have been prescribed by Islam a long time ago. It's some societies, some traditions that unfortunately have given Islam the bad name of mistreating women. Finally, and I really mean it finally, we're also very engaged in opening up to civil society. We think this is something the OIC should do more. And now most societies worldwide is a place where not only government, not only private sector, but the civil society, the NGOs, have a significant role to play. And the OIC must open up to that sector. We've started with humanitarian NGOs, but now we're expanding to open the door for all sorts of NGOs to be part and parcel of whatever the OIC does or intend to do, especially in the planning stage. With this note, I repeat my thanks to you, Excellency, and to the IPI for this wonderful opportunity. And of course, above all, I thank you for coming here, for being patient, and I look forward to whatever comments or questions that you may have within the traditions of IPI. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those very candid words of wisdom, and I think I will characterize it as embracing tolerance, which is so important in a world where hatred, intolerance, violence, and terror, unfortunately, is on the rise. I think you covered an amazing, broad list of topics.
You want me to sit or stand here?
Sorry, if you would like to sit.
No, I'd like to stand.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Whatever you like.
It doesn't bother you if I keep standing. Makes me less nervous.
You are such a towering figure anyhow, so it doesn't really matter.
Not at 5'7".
I was just about to say that I think you covered an amazing set of topics over just a few minutes: Israel, Palestine, Nigeria, Syria, Iraq, Myanmar, etc. You touched upon gender equality, marriage and love, Islamophobia, hate speak, and also some of the dilemmas which we all are facing and which produces hard choices to us all. One of them being the contradiction between freedom of expression and respect for religion and for figures within religions. I think without further ado, since the spectrum you open up is so broad that even if I'm tempted to ask you a couple of questions and then would come later, I think I will just open the floor. You have a unique opportunity here to ask questions and to discuss with the leader of the second largest international organization in the world. The lady on the front, could you please state your name and affiliation before you speak, and the microphone will come over to you. Thank you.
Shazia Rafi, formerly Secretary General of Parliamentarians for Global Action, now Managing Director of Global Parliamentary Services. Assalamu alaikum. I had the honor of working, Your Excellency, with your predecessor while I was at PGA, working with parliamentary systems on development issues in Pakistan, Turkey, Tunisia, and Nigeria. I would like to ask you plans you have for strengthening the parliamentary arm of the OIC, the POIC, because you've mentioned political will, you've mentioned the internal conflicts on sectarian basis in many of our countries, including those that are democratic. And this is an area where Parliament, which is supposed to represent the different views and the different groups in society, should be strengthened to resolve these more peacefully and also engage on an international level. Thank you.
Thank you. You worked with Akmaluddin Ihsanoglu?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Since that was such a long question, I think I would go straight back to you, Mr. Madani, in order to address those issues. And then I would suggest that we have two or three questions and collect and then respond to them. But I will first give you the opportunity, Mr. Madani, to
Thank you.
Respond to the speaker.
Well, just a quick word. Dr. Akmaluddin has done wonderful things for the OIC. And perhaps, like I was telling His Excellency in his office, he also ran after leaving office for President of Turkey, which sort of create this hope among former Secretary Generals that the future is not all that bleak after the OIC. There is an association now of parliamentarians in the member states, and we are in the process of recognizing them as an affiliated organization. You see, we have three types of organizations under the umbrella of the OIC. One is subsidiaries that are directly under the Secretary Generals, and one are specialized that have their own board of directors, like the Islamic Development Bank and ISESCO. And the others, the majority, are affiliated. And we are in the process of accrediting the Parliamentarian Association as an affiliated society. And you know, we think that that voice must be heard within the OIC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I then see a hand on my right there. You have the floor. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General.
If you can state your name and affiliation, please.
My name is Rafael de Bustamante. I work for the European Union mission to the UN, and we have a great cooperation between our two organizations, both in New York and in Brussels and Jeddah. I have a question. I mean, you have mentioned the extreme voices in religions, and you know, this year we have witnessed a lot of violence motivated by religious extremists. So, what is your view on what is the role of you as new Secretary General of the OIC on this? I think my feeling is that sometimes we don't hear much the religious leaders calling for to speak up when atrocities are committed in the name of God. I don't think any of the religions of the world will call to kill each other on that matter. So I think I would like to hear your views on that. Maybe a last thing, I mean, you spoke about family values and the composition of family, and you mentioned some examples, but society has changed in the last years, and we also have, I mean, families that are composed by one parent because the other one has left or has died. We have also grandparents taking care of children, especially, you know, now we have a crisis where parents are left behind in a country in crisis. So I would like just to make this remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will take a couple of other questions before we go back to the speaker. Then the gentleman just in front of me here.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like, first of all, to thank IPA for organizing this meeting and for His Excellency Madani to come for us to give...
Can you speak a bit louder, please?
His Excellency Madani to come for us to give his views on OIC. Actually, with your rich experience, you have covered all the points, let's say, in a very short time, and we understand how knowledgeable you are about the subjects and, let's say, the challenges. So I just would like to be short. How are you going, let's say, to overcome these challenges, especially that the media now is playing a very strong role in sometimes showing some pictures and some reports which make Islam, let's say, let's say, in very difficult position. So how to overcome this, especially with your experience as a minister also of, let's say, information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you forgot to mention your name and affiliation.
Sorry, I am Atlasi from the Mission of Morocco, Minister Counselor. Thank you.
Thank you. And I saw at least one other hand. I can see one at the very back.
Thank you. George Baumgarten, correspondent for Jewish newspapers in North America. You mentioned the situation between Israel and the Palestinians, and you're looking forward to seeing the investigation. You also mentioned the bombs that the Israelis had dropped all over Gaza. Does the tens of thousands of rockets, I know some of them are very small, rockets that have fallen all over Israel not count for something, and how do you view those? And if you were speaking to either Mr. Abbas or Mr. Netanyahu, what would you advise them to do for the purpose of promoting peace?
Thank you very much, Mr. Madani. I will go back to you. That was a very wide range of different questions to be addressed. You have the floor.
Thank you. I think I'll start with the gentleman from the AU. We have a very close and continuous relationship. Actually, a group of OIC senior officials were just in Brussels, I think, last week. We have these regular sessions so that we could compare notes and understand each other's better. Family, all I meant is that that all societies have their own values, and there are values that we all share, and we should respect as human beings. This is what the Declaration of Human Rights is all about. Or I was saying that any society should not take what is unique to it and assume that this should be a universal human value. As to the atrocities committed in the name of religion, the OIC has been very vocal about this. Like His Excellency said kindly in his introduction, as far as ISIS, or the criminal state in Iraq, we were among the very first to declare a clear position, especially when that criminal state started forcing Christians to flee their homes and places that they've been living in there for centuries, and their mistreatment of Yazidis. Actually, ISIS has killed more Muslims than it has killed other denominations. I think they give everybody equal dosage of their criminality. But I think what we are careful about is how religions and sects are used for political purposes. In our view, there are many cases where actually religious banners were used to advocate political and nationalistic tendencies, and not vice versa. As to how to overcome those challenges, well, I guess with a bit of good luck and some magic, but I think there are no shortcuts. There are no magical solutions. You have to do the hard work, the detailed work, the tedious work, as long as you have a sense of direction. And I think that we're all involved. This is not just the responsibility of organization. This is the responsibility of us as citizens and human beings to face up to some of these challenges. And since you are from Morocco, if I may say so, we appreciate sometimes the positive role that some leaderships play in facing up to some of these challenges. And I must say, not to be nice to you, that the approach taken by the leadership in Morocco towards the reformation of the domestic political scene is most admirable, and I wish it would be something that others would emulate. As to George, well, I appreciate the concern and the Israeli voices that point to the rockets that some Gaza groups have tried to hit the Israelis with. In my view, the balance of power is clearly, overwhelmingly, is in the side of Israel. Not only militarily, but also politically. Israel has the, total support of very powerful countries. And I think the onus now is on Israel to make peace. Israel was supposedly an example that the Jewish people wanted to demonstrate not only their rights of a place to call a state for themselves, but also in the way they treat others, relate to others, in the way they conduct their society. And I think if I were, of the Jewish faith, my first concern would be that to see that the current government of Israel is dismantling all these values that make Judaism such a great religion. Any more questions, sir?
Thank you very much. Before I open the floor again, I have one question to you. We are all following these days what seems to be a growing alliance between Muslim countries and predominantly, on the other side, Western countries, either secular or Christian, in order to meet the challenge of the Islamic State, which of course is neither Islamic nor a state, but anyhow, that's what they call themselves. So my question to you is, there are now being deployed military forces in order to stop the advance of IS, but will an organization like yours, or more precisely will your organization, also contemplate deploying emissaries on the ground, basically to counter the notion that IS is within the religious and political framework of Islam, so that there is both a kind of military offensive, but also a cultural and religious offensive against the Islamic State?
Thank you. As far as the military action, as you know, Secretary Kerry was in the region, and there was a high-level ministerial meeting held in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, attended by all the Gulf state foreign ministers, and also Turkey, Egypt, and Jordan, and Iraq. And I think that was sort of the formal declaration of an international coalition to face up to ISIS, the criminal state in Iraq. The OIC view, Excellency, is that it's not enough to face up to such movements militarily. It's not enough to send drones and airstrikes. I think it's deeper than that. As necessary as military action may be, there has to be a sustained political effort. And the first priority is to rebuild institutions within Iraq, those institutions that were dismantled. Iraq has to regain itself as a full-fledged society with political institutions, bureaucracy, social institutions, security. And it has to be a country, a unified country, built on the notion of being an Iraqi, not of being a Shia or a Sunni or a Kurd or an Arab. That is the environment that will really eliminate and dig deep into the roots of Daesh. As far as the confronting Daesh from this, depriving them from their Islamic banners, there is very active movements now in most of the Muslim countries, many declarations from religious leaders, from political leaders, from social organizations, and certainly from organizations like the OIC, the Arab League, that declare in very strong and uncertain language that this is not Islamic. We will continue to do so, and I agree with you 100% that you should hit them at their legitimacy. They are now claiming legitimacy from an Islamic point of view, and there is nothing that can be further from the truth. Thank you.
Thank you for those words. I see a few more hands here. Then the lady on the front bench here, if you could state your name and affiliation, please.
Good morning, Maureen Quinn from the International Peace Institute. Secretary General Madani, my question, is to you as the head of the OIC. The Islamic State, these other organizations, they're attracting young people from all over the world. What can the OIC, what are you doing, or what do you think you can do to address this issue of this attraction, and you did say in your remarks how these kind of issues require long-term hard work, but specific ideas, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I would move to another person in the family.
Warren Hogue, International Peace Institute. Secretary General, I want to continue the conversation about Israel and the Palestinians. the OIC has been dedicated, obviously, to the plight of the Palestinians. There are various approaches right now. You noted in your remarks that the OIC is a political organization. And you also noted the Arab Peace Plan of 2002. Is that the way forward, an adoption of that? There is increasing talk of that peace plan now 12 years later. Is the two-state solution through negotiations, is that the better path? And then thirdly, would you advise the Palestinians on whether they should pursue statehood here at the United Nations?
Secretary General, you have the floor to respond.
Thank you. Well, let me talk about northern Nigeria just as an example of what can be done in situations similar to that. First, like His Excellency Mr. Lassen said, you have to dismantle that notion that such movements are Islamic. So you deprive them from their religious legitimacy. And two, you have to address the realities of the region where they have their strongholds. Borno and Maiduguri, the city and the states where they are strongly placed in Nigeria, are less developed than the rest of Nigeria. So there is this sense of being left behind, even within the same country. And then also being ignored by other countries, that their plight as a place where help should be channeled, where development projects, investment should take place. So I think you should address that poverty thing, because this is what creates an environment that you recruit people. And then you have to insert a sense of hope. These young people who are recruited are not only recruited because they are brainwashed by religious slogans. They also need a source of income, and also they need a sense of belonging. When you join such an organization, it's like joining one of those, private clubs where you relate to other people who share your ideas and your convictions, and suddenly your life takes a meaning more than just simply getting drunk and going on drugs and sitting around all day with nothing to do. And I think that dimension should also be addressed. The social factor, the social fabric, the opportunity to identify. And these are the three parallel lines where the OIC effort is being directed. On the last line, on that social effort, we rely heavily on working with NGOs and non-government organizations, voluntary organizations that are in the region, because they have the better understanding, the more detailed understanding of the social fabric of their region. As to the question of the Israeli-Palestinian dilemma, this negotiation process started in Madrid, as you well know. And I think it was Mr. Shamir, then Prime Minister of Israel at the time, and he said, you want us to negotiate with the Arabs? We will, for the next 20 years. Actually, they have been negotiating for the past 30 plus years. And nothing has come out of these negotiations. And I hope some of you will not mind me saying this, but the Israelis are very clever negotiators. And they will come to a conference room like this and bring a goat. And then when you tell them, what is the goat doing here? This is a conference. We have the OIC Secretary General talking to us. And then they negotiate with you for a year or two till they finally agree to take the goat out, and then ask you for something in return for their concession. And this has been the process of negotiating with the Israelis. I think the Palestinians have gained so far nothing to point at, except, of course, the result of the Oslo Agreement, where at least they have some sort of a flag inside Palestine. But we talked about Gaza as a large prison. I was in Ramallah about a month ago. And when you arrive at such a beautiful city, hills and greenery and that beautiful stone they used to build their homes with, but then suddenly you realize that as a Palestinian, you're not allowed to leave that locale. You cannot use the highways, the roads. You cannot do anything, except of breathing, I suppose, without the permission of some Israeli authority. I think the more we wait, the situation changes on the ground. The settlements, the spreading of, the scattering of Palestinian locales, the wall the Israelis have built, all of that, little by little, makes the two-state solution a little bit out of place. The options that the Palestinian leaderships have are very few. That's why I said the onus is on the Israelis. They have all the cards, they have all the military strength, they have all the political support. But with such governments as the existing one could not be very hopeful. What we are advocating the Palestinians to do is to sign up the Rome Treaty and become part of the International Criminal Court, because I think some of these actions that take place in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip are actions that must be brought to the attention of the ICC. The punchline is that we need a solution, because that breeds violence and a sense of deprivation in the region, among Palestinians, among Arabs, among Muslims. It's a source of conflict that we all know the solution to. We all know the ingredients for that solution. We just have the political will. And the political will, at this point in the power relationship, has to come from here, for the American political establishment, and above all, from the Israeli political leaders. But with leaders like Prime Minister Netanyahu, Foreign Minister Lieberman, one could not hope for much. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've covered lots of terrain related to the topic at hand today, namely the role of the Organisation for Islamic Cooperation. Absolutely. Today, challenges and opportunities. But if there should be one or two more questions, I am willing to take them before we close. I can see 2 hands there at the back. I think we will start with the gentleman who's standing towards the wall first, and then we'll move forward to the lady.
Omar Al-Okta with IPI.
Can you lift the microphone?
Sure. Omar Al-Okta with IPI. Thank you, Your Excellency, for being with us here today. You briefly mentioned sectarianism in your remarks vis-a-vis the conflicts in Iraq and Syria, but I was wondering if you could elaborate a little on how you see the OIC as a forum for intra-faith dialogue rather than just interfaith dialogue. How do you see that the organization playing a role in that under your leadership? Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we then take the last question as the lady in front of the speaker who wanted to take the floor? You have the floor.
Thank you. Judy Hilton, Department of Peacekeeping Operations. Sir, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the Arab and Iranian...
Could you please rise, please?
Yes. Judy Hilton, Department of Peacekeeping Operations. Sorry about that. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you see the role of the OIC in sort of Saudi-Iranian, Gulf Iranian relations, and to what extent the influence in the Middle East and feeding conflicts there could be addressed by a closer rapport or reconciliation, at least, of major issues between them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I hope I can sound more convincing sitting down than standing up. But for the question of intra-dialogue, actually, a few years ago, we had, the OIC had a summit, extraordinary summit. And one of the resolutions made unanimously in that summit was to establish a center for dialogue among the different Muslim scholars and sects, which is, I suppose, once it sees the light of the day, will be a stage, a very important stage for intra-dialogue among Muslims. We hope to have that center opening up in the near future. We're working hard to find the place, finish the logistics and the bylaws and what have you. Sometimes it takes longer than one is capable of. But there is a number of private entities and organizations and stages that do this. Our hope that this center will formalize the process and makes it easier to accumulate and reach and make an impact. But again, we'll always, in my view, keep in mind that sometimes religion is used for political purposes rather than it enhances political or it's the reason or the cause for political. As far as the Saudi-Iranian relationship, I think the lady, if I heard her correctly, is there a hope for a rapprochement? That's the question, I think. What we are advocating in the OIC, not only advocating, but working very hard to get done, is that we see conflicts in many of the regions where member states are. And we feel that there is a need for new paradigms in most of these regions. And if you talk Saudi-Iranian in particular, we think the countries of those regions, it's Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, some of the Gulf states, perhaps Egypt, should come together with no outside help, to find out how each country's legitimate national rights are identified, are respected, and where these national rights can live together in a region that can benefit from open commerce and common projects. There are many examples in the world, in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, where such paradigms have worked to the advantage of the countries of each one of those regions. This is what we are pushing for, and this is what we hope to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I took notice both when we were together in my office and also when you spoke here that you spoke so warmly and admiringly about your predecessor who ran for president of his country. But I do take for granted that you do not have the same ambitions for your own country.
I will run for Mufti.
Sitting or standing, I think what we've heard and seen here today is indeed a towering figure. And I think we all have reached the conclusion listening to you is that the OIC is very lucky to have you at the helm of the organization with the challenges you are facing and we all together are facing. I am very, very pleased to having gotten to learn you and listen to your words of wisdom. And I think I have everybody with me when I'm saying that we appreciate so much seeing you as the new Secretary General, as such an articulate spokesperson and such a warm defender of tolerance, mutual respect and non-violence as you are representing. So, sir, thank you very much and good luck to you. Let's work together for the same end.